It appears that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia may be one of the biggest backers of Donald Trump. Now, on Thursday, Judd Legum of Popular Information actually laid out the full extent to which the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has put money into the Trump family. Now, of course, the reason that this is important is you don't invest money into a candidate or his family without trying to get something in return. That is corruption 101. And as Legum and, of course, anyone who knows anything about Donald Trump, well, you know that Donald Trump is 100% corrupt and more than happy to serve himself and the people that help him out. As long as, of course, there's some sort of benefit in it for him, which, getting all this money from Saudi Arabia, there definitely is. So now, Legum writes this. Since Trump left office, entities controlled by the Saudi government, a regressive regime responsible for the murder of U.S.-based journalist Jamal Khashoggi, has sent billions to Trump and his family members. So he laid out the different occasions where this had happened. To begin with, wrote Legum, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, or PIF, has spent billions creating Live, a new golf tour. 2 of Live's 8 tournaments in 2022 were held at Trump-owned golf courses, including the season-ending championship at Trump Doral in Florida. Then there's the PIF's investment into Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, through his real estate business. The full board of PIF, led by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, or Mohammed Bin Salman, as I like to call him, overruled the committee's recommendation and decided to invest about $2 billion into the president's son-in-law, former president, sorry. Under the deal, Kushner will receive a $25 million annual management fee, plus a percentage of any profits. This deal was approved by the Saudi royals over the objections of PIF officials who recommended against it. And of course, the reason is Jared Kushner is a slumlord and he makes horrible investments. He's not a smart person. He's not a very good investor. So there you go. Nonetheless, here we have the Saudi government obviously trying to, pay off Jared Kushner for not only his work in when he was in the, an advisor to Donald Trump, but maybe, trying to butter up Trump if he gets into the White House again to do more favors for Saudi Arabia. That includes weapons deals, weapons sales. So that said, Kushner, as I mentioned, is an advisor to Trump on Mideast policy, and the Trump administration, above the objections of Congress, had continued to support the Saudi-led genocide in Yemen, sending them missiles, weapon systems, which were used to kill innocent people. There's more. Legum also writes that about another Trump licensing deal that's in the works with a private company closely linked to the Saudi royals. Earlier this week, Trump struck a deal with Saudi-based real estate company to license its name to a housing and golf complex that will be built in Oman. The agreement was made with Dar Al Arkan, one of Saudi Arabia's largest real estate companies, for the project. Under the arrangement, Trump will receive a cut of condo sales or golf course revenue in exchange for allowing its name to be used. The proceeds, Legum writes, would be considerable, since the project is estimated to cost $1.6 billion and will include an estimated 3,500 residential units, luxury retail, and 450 rooms at the hotels. Speaking of, by the way, hotels, we had, there's I'm trying to think of a quote here from Trump about the Saudis and how the Saudis would, of course, put money into Donald Trump's pockets by going and reserving rooms at Trump Hotel. And afterwards, Trump's like, oh, I love the Saudis. They come in and they give me lots of money. Why wouldn't I love the Saudis? Yeah, it's the same guy who tried to ban Muslims from the country. And yet here, the Saudi Arabia, the Saudi regime, again, incredibly regressive, fundamentalist. He loves them. And by the way, our government under both Democrats and Republicans tends to bow to the Saudis as a result of Saudis holding a lot of sway when it comes to the energy markets. So let's be fair about that. But Donald Trump, more so I think than anyone else, is a lapdog for the Saudi government. That said, now it goes further than just lucrative deals for Donald Trump, and it actually goes into political and Trump's political aspirations, mainly, of course, to try to avoid some of his legal issues. So let me ask, what is one of the biggest issues everybody talks about as a problem being under the Biden administration? Inflation. Inflation, high gas prices. Now, of course, corporate greed has fed that inflation by a massive amount. And so that's part of it. And of course, oil supply. So now what better way to wreck an administration that you don't like, that you're not in favor of, by making it more difficult for people to afford gas? I mean, it just makes sense, right? If you're in control of the oil and you don't like the administration over in the United States, which is the most powerful country in the world, then what would you do? You might want to restrict oil, cause prices to rise. Not only do you make a profit, but then voters in that country, in the United States, might turn against the administration and be like, well, I guess we'll vote for Republicans then. That makes all the sense in the world. And I don't know why people don't point that out, because it's super obvious. That said, right, Biden's energy policy doesn't have anything to do with why we have inflation and high gas prices. Joe Biden, I mean, look, you hear from Republicans all the time, Keystone XL wasn't built. We still have the Keystone pipeline. It still exists. Biden didn't shut down the Keystone pipeline or destroy it, just didn't build the Keystone XL pipeline. They also, Biden, why are we not doing more drilling? Why are we not doing more drilling? What about oil and gas leases? Biden isn't doing anymore. Well, back in March, Biden addressed this. And it's noted that he said 90% of onshore oil production takes place on land that isn't even owned by the federal government. And of the remaining 10% that does occur on federal land, the oil and gas industry has millions of acres leased, about 24 million, and have about 9,000, just over 9,000 permits to drill. It's over 9,000. That's how many permits they're sitting on. And they're not using all those permits. In fact, again, as I mentioned, 24 million acres under lease to oil and gas companies. That's federal land. Close to half are not producing any oil. Why is that? I mean, there's a couple different reasons, right? Oil companies want prices high. That's normal. Oil companies are, you're not going to be surprised, they're companies or corporations, and their main goal is to make as much profit as possible. This is not a hard concept. It is not rocket science. High prices, guess what? Equals more profits. That said, is there a ceiling as to where the American people will, well, start grabbing pitchforks? Yeah. Are we there yet? No. Surprisingly, somehow the American people, and I hate to say it, we are actually quite docile when it comes to facing down corporate greed and doing something about it, compared to the French, who will literally riot. But that's another conversation time. But that said, not only that, oil and gas companies, there's another reason why they're sitting on these leases. They can raise money from investors by not drilling on leases with proven reserves. This is according to Hugh Daigle, an associate professor at the University of Texas Hildebrand Department of Petroleum and Geosystems Engineering. And he says, quote, "There's actually an incentive for the companies not to develop these resources, because for publicly traded companies, these reserves get reported and influence market valuation." And of course, then you get into the speculative market, where you have oil speculators that are literally placing bets on Wall Street whether or not the price of gas continues to go up or down, which again actually influences the price of gas to go up and down. The reason that we are paying more for gas is literally capitalism. Yeah. You might say, okay, but what does this have to do with the Saudis? Well, for one, a lot. So politically, Mohammed bin Salman prefers Trump as president. Well, of course. You know why? Because Trump let him get away with anything and continued to send him weapons to use in, to use in their war. So their genocide, right? So not only that, but again, when you look at the Republicans' energy policy, they're against solar. They're against alternative energies, wind. Less renewable energy equals more dependence on private fossil fuels, right? Private fossil fuel corporations. Remember, 90% of oil leases are owned by private multinational corporations. So what they do is they drill the oil, they sell it on the world market, and, make a profit. Or I should say they sell it to the refiners refine it and sell it on the world market. The last thing the Saudis want is the United States using less fossil fuels. The Saudis also belong to OPEC. Now, OPEC is, again, oil cartel. And they can, they have several different member states that can go through and ramp up or draw down production. And that, again, has a gigantic influence on the supply of oil on the world market and, of course, the prices. So that said, the irony about this entire situation with Saudi Arabia is, they're actually really invested in creating renewable energy for themselves. They're selling the majority of their oil and are investing heavily in these, solar projects. Interesting. So that said, right, the Saudis also own the oil company. Okay, they own the company that owns Saudi oil, meaning that it's essentially nationalized oil, something that we would never do here in the United States. But so, look, that kind of explains the financial stuff of why the Saudis prefer Donald Trump. They make lots of money when Republicans are in office. That said, it's not like other administrations, Democratic administrations, didn't treat the Saudis like, I guess, literal princes and kings. They did. And again, the reason is the petrodollar. It all comes down to economics. It all comes down to access to those oil supplies. So, of course, that's why you had, the Obama administration, the Biden administration continuing to sell arms and weapons to the Saudis. That said, it for Trump, it seems to go far beyond just that because of the level of corruption, personal corruption, that the Trump family is engaged in. And so, look, they know Trump and his family are the corrupt, that they're easily bought. And so it's kind of a no-brainer to try to get Donald Trump back into office by funding him and his family. And to get Trump back into office, well, why wouldn't you make economic conditions worse by, limiting the amount of oil on the global markets, driving up the price, and making a tidy profit on top of it?